Looking for a better way to import your FBX files into Unreal? I'm sure you are. I'll show you another way to do it. Starting off in Cinema 4D, I wanted to show you the model that I'm going to import first. It's just a static mesh, but I have this model of a car that I've gone through and organized this down into null objects and groupings and set this up the way that I want. So in here, I've got these kind of set up to how I would animate these in Cinema 4D and tires that can move and all that fun stuff. But just to kind of show you how this comes in, but this wheel is a good example where I have my rotation kind of set here in the middle. So this can rotate perfectly. I don't have to worry about realigning this later. I've got this also set up into other parts like headlights, interior, dashboard, just anything that I think I would want to access later and not want to fully repiece into Unreal Engine. So this is the first example I want to show you. Okay, so in Unreal Engine, I've got a blank scene with just some basic lighting so we can see what we're going to do. And now we're going to import this model. So I've got the model that I had prepped for Unreal Engine, which is what I just showed you. And we're going to import this in using method 1. So this is what everybody's used to seeing, at least I'm assuming. You have the option to make a skeleton mesh, nanite. You've got your basic import options. And, this is what you do when you drag and drop. Great. So we're going to import this model into this folder and watch it load. Okay, so our file has imported. We have all those normal layers that it gets. We're just going to clear that out. And as you can see, we have all of our static meshes that come with this car, which is a lot. And we also have our materials that go with it as well, which is good. So what I want to do when I set these up is I like containing these inside of a blueprint for a number of reasons, but it just gives me flexibility going between different levels or scenes or whatever. So I'm going to make a blueprint class, make an actor, we'll just call it BP car. And now the way I would set this up is I'm going to go in and grab all of my static meshes, which is a lot, and drag and drop these guys into here. And as you can see, great. Car's imported, got all the pieces that I want. The downside is I don't have that organization that I had before. So all that time I spent in my Cinema 4D scene is gone. Or at least organizing it. So I'd have to go back through and create parents and adjust pivots and all that stuff to rebuild this to the groupings that I want. The other downside with this is, as you can see, the FBX imports with its anchor point or origin at the world origin. So the 000 in Cinema 4D is now the pivot point of this mesh inside of Unreal. So if I want to rotate this to have the wheel spin, you can now see that's a problem. So what I would normally do is create an empty null object. I'd place it in the middle. I'd put all of these in. But it's really, really difficult to try to create your rotation point and make it perfect. And a lot of these times these wheels start to wobble and it just poses a problem. You could also try to move the pivot point itself, but regardless, unless if you have a good point to snap to, it's really hard to get this perfectly centered. One workaround that I would do in the past is I would make this wheel inside of Cinema as its own object, and I would zero that out to the world origin, so I knew that it was going to rotate perfectly, and when I would bring it in, I would manually just align all of the wheels. So this is the method that I am the most aware of, and what most people have probably done. So you can see it has its flaws. It's a fair amount of work to rebuild this. Yeah. So method 2, we're going to import this same method, but we're going to try something different. So I'm going to copy my folder location. We're going to go to File, Import into Level, and now we're going to select this. Why this is this way, I really don't know, but it is another way of doing it. And big shout out goes to Wayne Porter at Studio X. I never knew this until he showed it to me, and this has been a big game changer. So now I'm going to open this up. We're going to drop this into the folder that we want. And now you're going to notice we have a different FBX import options menu. And it took me a minute to kind of really dive into this. And all of the stuff you saw in method 1 is still here, but we have more options to play with. So we have a root node, which is great. And static meshes, you'll see that all of them are still in here. And the great thing about this, and I'm pretty sure this is why the root node is here, is this will actually keep your file organization the way that you had it. So it imports all these static meshes. Number of different options you can use over here, but it also gives you the option to import skeletal meshes as well. Nothing's animating in here, so we're just going to focus on static meshes. But there's another tab too where you can see all the materials that I had in Cinema 4D are in here, and you can optionally pick which ones you want to import or not. The last thing I wanted to note on this, that to me I think is one of the more important things, is hierarchy type. So you have three options here: create level actors, which will import all of this into the current level that you have, similar to how Cineware would do it. You have all your meshes available, you have access to them. You have create one actor with components. So this will create one single object over in your outliner, and then you'll have access to all these subcomponents in Sequencer, or you can pull that object in and then access things. But it just keeps it a lot cleaner. You won't have like several hundred things listed down here. But at the same point, it'll also give you all of your meshes and objects over here, so you could bring them back in. It just cleans it up a little bit and kind of contains it. And the one I like the most is create blueprint asset. So I'm going to go ahead and import this in, and it's going to button all of this up into a blueprint for me. All right, so we've imported this in, and now we have this blueprint open. So as you can see, it created this blueprint like I told it to, and all of my interior components are here. So all my meshes are here. My organization is held intact, which is great. I've got my doors and everything else. So my whole scene hierarchy is here, and best of all, my rotation is kept in place. So now if I want to animate these wheels, I don't have to worry about that FBX being off. It is in its place. And better yet, the actual mesh itself also has its pivot point in the spot that it's supposed to be. So it's not like all the meshes are at this world origin and just this empty object that contains it is there. Everything is exactly the way that I set it up in Cinema 4D. And like I said, the file organization just saves a lot of time when you have a model that you're going to use with 274 pieces to it. I can jump immediately into starting to rig this thing up and having it go. So huge benefits to doing the method, file and import into level. This has been a game changer for importing stuff, as you can see. So the last method I want to show you is actually the same thing as method 2, but I have another file here, and anything that's not static meshes that's dealing with animation, I have this torus here that is just a static mesh, and then I've got this platonic that I've just simply animated because I wanted to see how I can make smaller assets and import them and just see how this FBX version does. And I've also got a camera in here. Now I don't deal much with cameras in Cinema that I bring over to Unreal. I usually just do the cameras in Unreal because that's my preferred method. But if you did want to animate some of the stuff, I brought it in. So what I initially tried to do is I created a null object. I put the camera inside of this, and then I went through and I animated this null object. So one problem with this in the FBX format that I've noticed is the null objects don't export. It's got to have some piece of geometry attached to it for the animation to actually export. So what I do is a workaround. It's not ideal, but it's not a big deal either, is I just go to and create a simple polygon. It can be a triangle, it can be a quad. It's just enough to import in, like I said, it's a tiny little piece. I just make it small so it can't be seen, but it imports in the data correctly in the FBX, and I can either make it invisible, or I can just transfer over the keyframe animation if that's what I really want to do. But for this, fine to just make it invisible so you can't see, and then I can attach something like my camera to it and import this in. So watch this play. You can kind of see like this is the weird little shot that I made just to kind of test and see, is this working? So I exported out this whole setup as an FBX, and now let's import that. So same scene, why not? We'll just treat it like a little icon or something. So let's go to File, Import into Level, and I've got it up. Copy this path. Copy this path and paste it into Unreal, and I've got this MoGraphy thing because that's what I'm making. Models, drop it down in here into version 3. So same thing here, we've got this root node. For this, I don't want to create a blueprint. I could either do the level actors and just bring these in as individual pieces, which I'll probably do second, but I'll just show you this first. We'll create one actor with components so you can see how this part works too. My static mesh, that torus that's not animating, is going to import as a static mesh, and skeletal mesh. So I've got the platonic, which is that rotating little diamond thing, and polygon, which I'm using as a null object, and I just didn't rename it. And then also the two materials that I've got. So let's import this into this level. So now you'll see I've got this guy. So it imported the camera in with it. We're just going to bring this up over the top of the car. And I've got a sequence open. So let's just take a look at how this guy breaks down. So if I imported this in and I wanted to animate, so if I look at the tracks, these are all the components that come in with it that are nested in this single object. So the camera's here, Cinema 4D editor, which I'm pretty sure this is what allows you to keep updating and whatnot, but I'm not 100% sure. Your default scene root, the platonic, the polygon, and the torus. So right now I'm just going to do the platonic for argument's sake on this. And I'm going to open up track and then animation, and you'll see that animation that we brought in is now here. So I can slide this out, watch it go, and look, there it is, animating in all of its glory. So you have access to this, which is great. Same idea, this MoGraphy thing. Like I said, it's a little bit of a cleaner method, but it could be a little slower depending on how you're doing it. We'll bring this polygon in as well. And this has its own animation that came in with it as well. So now that's moving around in space somewhere. Kind of lost track of it, and it's a little harder to see. But yeah, that's the first method of doing this. So the other method, we're just going to delete this, delete all this, because we're just going to try this one last time so you guys can see it. File, import into level, MoGraphy thing, models, lyric, version 3. Yeah, we're going to replace it. It's still detecting some root component. But this one, I'm just going to bring it in as just level actors. There's not a lot. This is probably the best method of just having quick control over stuff and being able to modify it without it all being encapsulated into one piece. Static mesh still, skeletal meshes look good, and our materials. So let's import this guy in. And now you'll see we've got all of those separate pieces that we could just create a folder and organize it that way. So editor, a little easier to manage. So the torus and the polygon, whoops, and the platonic, move those guys back up. And now I can just drag and drop these guys in here, add the animations. It's really quick. Same with the polygon. Let's add its animation to it. And now these are moving, so now I'll just make this camera child of polygon. We're going to attach it to the only bone that it makes when it's a skeletal mesh. And let's test it. So now you can see I've moved the alignment, but this little MoGraphy thing would have actually been in the exact same spot that Cinema 4D imported it to. So you saw earlier it was down there. It would have actually been the same thing, but since I slid it up, it's there. But all this information's still intact. So I've got whatever I need. This camera, I could now go ahead and set this as a target or an actor or whatever, and I can start using the animation that I used in Cinema 4D and building off of that for this. So I hope you found these methods useful. It's already saved me a ton of time and helping me work a lot faster. Thanks for watching. Happy importing.